All eyes on the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana this afternoon as he tables his maiden budget speech. Some economists expecting the minister to maintain most of the current tax regimes. This on the back of the economy and fiscus that are recovering from the devastating impact of COVID-19 regulations. The improvement in revenue driven by commodities and the lowering of lockdown regulations to level 1 could also give consumers a relief from higher taxes. For more on this, we bring in our colleague Nompumelelo Siziba. Nompumelelo, a lot of activity now in your background. What's the latest?
Thanks very much, Desiree. Yes, indeed, a lot of activity, having to compete with a lot of sound in the background. The EFF in the around the parliamentary district precinct, basically campaigning. They're not happy that government has borrowed money from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. They say that these organizations continue to hold great sway over government policy on South Africans and taking away, if you like, our sovereignty for the fact that we go to these institutions. But of course, part of the reason why government goes to these institutions is that it is a member of South Africa is a member of these institutions, and when they borrow money from these institutions, rather than going on the international financial markets, they get concessional rates, they get better interest rates, and over a period of time they would pay less in interest than if they had gone to, say, a Goldman Sachs or a Barclays Bank internationally to borrow money. So that's part of the reason why they do it. But of course, when government makes these decisions, not everybody is happy with these decisions, as much as it may make economic or financial sense. So of course, one of the big issues is what will the finance minister have to say around where money is going to come from. We know that the government has got a heavy debt burden, and the move is to actually bring that down. And of course, that doesn't mean that the priorities in the country suddenly go away. You have the social budget, you have the infrastructure budget, you have a myriad of budgets that you must look at and cater to. So, of course, one of the ways is to raise more revenue through tax. Where does the finance minister have wiggle room to do that? Many people are complaining that we're taxed too much. Well, to speak to this issue, I'm joined by Professor Deborah Tickle. She is a tax professor currently lecturing at the University of Cape Town. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us.
Good morning, Nampu.
Good stuff. So, of course, it's a very big question, isn't it? Do you anticipate that the finance minister will levy higher taxes on the usual things like personal income tax, company income tax? But of course, we have heard from the previous finance minister, Tito Mboweni, that there was a possibility of bringing that down to 27%. And of course, VAT, which is said to be regressive in nature because it also affects the poor.
Yes, no, I'm totally with you. Insofar as the corporate tax is concerned, it's 2 years since he promised that reduction in rate, and obviously we need to stimulate the economy. The reduction in rate is countered by a tax which will ensure that interest is not overpaid overseas, and also by a limitation on use of assessed losses. So in giving the 27% rate, if he gives it this year, those will automatically kick in and bring back some of perhaps the base erosion taxes. So I would be hopeful that we see that reduction, because that's stimulatory and will help the economy. And so far as the VAT is concerned, you're absolutely right. I mean, to increase the VAT would be hurting the poor, effectively. It would hurt the wealthy, but it will hurt the poor more.
Of course.
It's a widespread tax, and it would collect a lot of money. We know from the Davies Tax Committee report that an increase of 3% on the VAT, of which we've had one, the equivalent is a 6% increase in PIT, personal income tax, and a 5% increase in corporate income tax. So the question is, as you say, where does it come from? And to me, we need to look at what's happened and the fact that we have inequality in this country in a big way. We also have an increased poverty-stricken population, and we will need to address that, be it through the basic income grant or through more jobs, which is the preference. One of the ways that could be considered, and we never know what he's going to say until he says it, is a possible solidarity levy. We see that they have them in Germany, we see it in Mauritius. They increased their solidarity levy in 2020.
What does that constitute of? What does that,
Okay, yeah. So generally such levies are temporary, and they should be temporary because there are a significant increase in the personal tax that's brought in, and we already as individuals pay over almost 38% of the total tax bill. That was in 2020, although the number of taxpayers has decreased. But what it would essentially do is that above a certain income level, say 750,000, a million, 5 million, then there would be an extra levy tax paid. And that levy, as I say, should be temporary, but to my mind, it would not just apply to earnings, because those people are economically active and working hard. It would also apply to dividends. So that way you would keep the neutrality of people receiving dividends and people paying income tax. The maximum marginal rate of income tax, 45%. The tax paid on dividends is 20%, but one has to remember that the company that's paying the dividends has paid 28 already, so the effective rate, 43.5. If one were to increase the personal income tax on remuneration type income or other income, you'd have to increase it on dividends too. But temporarily, just so that we can inject some money into the economy. It needs to be used properly, otherwise it will be rejected. Yeah. But put it into the economy, generate the jobs that are required through the SONA initiatives, if they can be implemented, a big key word. And that way, basically stimulate the economy, say thank you very much to the people who still have jobs and still are generating nice income, and then cease it after a couple of years, hopefully.
On that point, those of us who are privileged enough to still have jobs and still have an income, just give us some perspective as to the tax base, because there's always that conversation about we have a shrinking tax base. Some of it is because people lost jobs, some of it, a very small part of it, but significant in the sense that the people who are leaving are usually high net worth individuals, are leaving the country, so they're not paying tax. What proportion of South Africans are actually helping to bring significant revenue into the kitty?
Okay, so just on the people leaving, as you may be aware, the stats, the SARS stats came out in January, and I was actually quite horrified to see that between 2017 and 2020, the number of people who paid exit taxes, that's the people leaving from the tax base, doubled almost. So it went from, it's small, 6,600 to 13,000, but those are, as you say, the wealthy. Yeah. And more will have gone, that was pre the COVID pandemic, so there will be more since. The tax base there had shrunk from just under 6 million to 5.3 million in total. But what is very concerning about our tax base is that if you take the people who are earning more than 500,000, now for some people 500,000 a year is a lot of money. It is for 99% of our population, it's a lot of money. But for many who are economically active, it isn't you're not a wealthy person just because you're earning 500,000. Those people who earn that 500,000 rand a year taxable income, they paid, that's 1.6% of our population, by the way, 1 million people out of 60 million, they paid 72% of the total tax for personal income tax in 2020. So obviously that might have changed a little, but not a lot. And that is a very worrying scenario because we know that it's decreased since then. Where is the money coming from? Again, I come back to growth. We have to have more people in the system earning money with the pride of earning their own money, but also contributing and feeling that they're contributing to the public goods.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense, because you need more people basically contributing to the fiscus, otherwise it's not going to be sustainable. That's a big argument. Okay, one of the issues I was talking to about earlier with somebody from an NGO that looks at socio-economic rights was the issue of fuel taxes and also excise duties. These are very topical issues. We know the alcohol industry is actually asking for government to cut them some slack in this regard because they were not able to sell alcohol for quite some time during the COVID lockdowns. And then with the fuel tax, it's just becoming quite unsustainable for an ordinary South African to get to work, whether they're paying for transport or putting fuel in their car. Do you think that there's any possibility that the finance minister would adjust those taxes in people's favour or not?
Personally, no. I don't think so. What he does might be another thing on the day, as you say. But no, personally, I don't see it being reduced. We have had 3 consecutive increases which have been significant, as you've said, in the fuel tax. And to increase again to keep increasing is unsustainable. So I don't see them adding more, but it's difficult to give back, especially in this tight situation we're in, even with the windfall from the mineral resources. Insofar as the liquor is concerned, I have sympathy with the liquor industry and with people who enjoy their liquor, but the problem I think we have there is that the government has seen that but through the lockdowns, the impact on the healthcare system of not having as many people consume has been significant. So I don't think there's going to be any sympathy for people who are drinking a lot, sadly. So I think we'll see the normal sin taxes and probably the normal kind of increases on the sin taxes. I don't think we'll see reductions in those taxes.
Okay, all right. Professor, thank you very much for your time. That was Professor Deborah Tickle. She's a tax professor currently lecturing at the University of Cape Town. We've covered a few issues there, and of course we continue with our rolling coverage on the National Budget 2022. And of course, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana set to deliver that speech at 2 o'clock. We'll have more for you as the day progresses. Back to you, Desiree.